All right, guys, it's the last week of May. Actually, it's May 29th. And I want to give you a quick update on the lake, what's going on out here, what I've noticed the last couple weeks since my last report. As you can see behind me here, the water has come up. It's back up in the buckbrush and around the willow trees. Really get a lot of flooded cover in the water right now. The problem is there's not a ton of fish that are still up. So you can't really run to the backs of the creeks and still catch them, but a lot of that stuff that's got a little bit deeper bank on it, you know, that's the kind of stuff that those fish will pull up on when the water comes up. Water level this morning was 360 and a half, and they're actually predicting it by Sunday night to be 361.2 last I checked. So that water is going to continue to come up. A lot of those fish are going to kind of really scatter out, because what happens this time of year when that happens, when you don't have a ton of fish that are up spawning, I think there's still a good number of fish probably up, but that big bulk majority of the fish I think have already spawned and are already starting to push out. So what happens is there's not a lot of fish to go around. So therefore, when you pull in a creek or in a pocket where there should be a lot of, you know, where everything's kind of flooded, you expect to get a lot of bites. It just feels right, but the fish are so scattered because there's not a lot of fish up. So that being said, there's still some fish to be caught, you know, flipping. You know, if you want to catch them with a flipping stick, you can get up shallow and flip. I wouldn't recommend going to the very backs of the creeks. You know, find those steeper banks where those fish will kind of stage, that are coming and going in. Places where transition areas where fish were coming and going anyway, you know, that were, you know, coming back, or fish that were leaving and that are post spawn that are moving out. Find those deeper banks that's got some flooded cover on it. That's where I would concentrate. You know, some of the islands, you know, if you go south on the lake, there's a lot of islands down through there. You know, fish will tend to, there's a lot of deep water around them, so they'll tend to kind of gang up around that stuff whenever it's whenever it floods this time of year. You know, we're looking at the first week of June. I feel like I should be talking about big swim baits, big crankbaits, stuff like that, but from what I've seen, and I'm not saying there's not some schools of fish that are already out there, but from what I've seen, it's not happening yet out here. You know, I spent a couple of days at Pickwick last week actually, and the guys are fishing the Toyota series down there right now, and there's some good weights right at the top, but you know, for the most part, you know, the fish were just getting out there. And typically Kentucky Lake is about 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks behind. Pickwick is usually a few weeks ahead of Kentucky Lake as far as those fish getting out on the river. Water temperatures have just now got to that mid 70s and staying there pretty stable. So I'm looking at 73-degree water this morning. You know, it's 76, 77 by the end of the day. So it's warming up. We're getting some hot, muggy days. It's going to drive those fish out. So I look for the next time I report those fish start showing up on some of those places. A little bit about that last year, you guys that kept up with any of my reports or fished Kentucky Lake at all, you know that, you know, last summer they just didn't get out there good. There was a lot of bait fish that stayed up shallow, and there was still a good many fish that stayed shallow all summer long, and you could catch them up there shallow. So I'm kind of optimistic that this year is going to be kind of a turnaround year, and we'll start seeing some more activity out there. But I'll touch on that for just a minute. Population of fish, number one, we don't have the fish population that we had 5-6 years ago. Number two, the threadfin shad aren't there, and that's what kept those fish on those ledges, you know, and schooled up. There's nothing for them to school up. And number three, there's so many carp out there that, you know, they kind of keep them pushed off of those places. So you guys that are coming down here to expect to catch them every cast on a crankbait or a swim bait, you know, I'm not trying to discourage you, and I'm just being 100% honest with you. You know, those days are, I really think in 2 or 3 years, with the number of 13, 14, 15-inch fish I'm even seeing this, you know, pre-spawn, I think that in a few years from now, we'll be back to, you know, will it ever be as good as it once was? I don't know. Do I think that we'll be better than we are right now? Absolutely. And I'm optimistic that this year, you know, we'll start seeing a few more schools, you know, places that fish will get on, you know, the community places that they have always got on in years past that they just never showed up on last year. So the good news is I've seen a good bit of fry just in the last couple of days. I got on the LBL side and was just going down the bank on these cloudy, nasty days with a spinnerbait, and I noticed a bunch of fry out, you know, just skipping across the water, and so much of it, they were everywhere. And I was like, I don't know what kind of fry they are. There's guys that are going to claim to be biologists that are going to tell you exactly what they are. They're Asian carp fry, or they're threadfin, or they're bass fry. Who knows? I'm not a biologist. I couldn't tell you what they are. What I do know is that I spent some time a little bit shallower around some of this cover this morning that you can see behind me, just flipping, because I love to flip. I love to catch them, you know, flipping the beaver style baits up in bushes. That's what I like to do. And I saw a good bit of that fry up around those bushes. So if you flipped up in there, you would see it scatter. Typically, you know, those bass fry will have that red tint to them. You'll see them in little balls. I have seen some of that. So I'm hoping that, you know, that's a good sign that we had a good spawn this year. I haven't been seeing any fry, and then all of a sudden it showed up. So I'm sure you guys that have come out here and fished it all the last few days have experienced the same thing and seen that. So that's good news. Let's talk about baits. You know, anytime there's a around post spawn, when fish are up, you know, garden fry, there's still a good bit of fish to be caught on topwater. And the Splashback 70 by 6 cents, it's a popping style bait, just a popping style bait. This is a bluegill color. Anytime those fish are up, you know, bluegill are spawning. I'm seeing pictures like crazy of guys catching those big bluegill, big red ear up around the beds and stuff. So anytime that's going on, those fish, you know, are up garden fry. They don't want anything around them. So that's a good bait. I've caught a few fish on that, you know, the popping style pop bars. But one thing that I found, and before this water came up, you'll start seeing this time of year, it's just like the weeds in your yard. This time of year, when it starts growing, that water willow starts really taking off. And just about a week or so ago, it really took off. And it's just a leafy green looking grass that grows right on the bank. And most of the time, it's right up on the bank where it doesn't have any water on it. Well, I spent a good bit of time last week actually fishing some of that stuff with a couple different baits, covering water with a buzz bait. This is an accent buzz bait. This is Jacob Wheeler's signature series buzz bait. It's one of the best ones I've found. Solid black with a white trailer, nothing special. I throw that on braid. But there's a couple of baits this time of year that when I start seeing that happen, when I start seeing those fish get into those willows, they'll get into any kind of cover that's in the water. If there's a piece of cover in the water, you need to fish it, because those fish are coming out. There's a good bit of shad, you know, hanging around them. If you get up real close, you'll see those. And that's just the swim jigs. And I like to throw two different colors. I'll have a bluegill color. This is the Divine Swim Jig from 6 cents. It's a bluegill pattern with just the Divine Swim bait on the back. And then I'll throw, because we're around a shad spawn, you know, there's a little bit of a shad spawn going on, I'll throw the, you know, the shad colors, just a white swim jig. So I'll have one of each rigged up, 3/8 ounce size, the white, the threadfin shad colors, and a bluegill. And that's a good bait to get up there tight around that willow grass or any kind of shallow cover. If you see a laydown or something, you know, there's a good chance that there's a fish in it, because normally when the water's not up like this, like last week, you just fish anything that was in the water, because those fish are coming, they're coming and going. For the most part, they're going that way, so they want to get out on that main river. I think they're just waiting for this warm up. You know, these warm, muggy days, I think, will drive most of the fish out there. So as far as baits, that's really all I've got going. You know, I've flipped a little bit. The 6 cents prawn I've talked about in weeks past, just because it's that time of year. You know, it's a great flipping bait. I'll flip it up shallow. One other bait that I've caught a few fish on is just a little square bill. This is a shad scales color, just a crush 50. And get up around those clay banks or those gravel banks and stuff that you see, where you see shad flicking if you get it right out at daylight. I have seen a little bit of a shad spawn. That's not something that I really spend a lot of time chasing. I've got 2 kids at home, so I usually try to help the wife get the kids out to daycare, you know, first thing in the morning. So I'm not out here a lot right at daylight, so that doesn't last that long. But you know, that's kind of it in a nutshell. 360 the water. It's coming up, predicting about 361 here in the next couple of days. You can catch some shallow. You can catch some that are kind of on points that are staging out, but not a lot of things that are really working, you know, really great right now. Overall, fishing is pretty tough. I've had some tough days out here. I've had a couple of average days, but I've not had any great days in the last couple of weeks. You know, it's just that tricky time of year. We don't have the population of fish, and springtime, pre-spawn and during the spawn, when the fish pull up, it'll really show you what they've, you know, what we still have left here in the lake. And a lot of 13, 14 inch fish. I'm seeing a lot more keeper size fish. So, you know, once a little bit later gets here, you know, here we are, the last week of May going on to 1st of June, those fish just kind of start scattering out again, and then you know, we're back to square one like we were last summer this time. I still think we're going to have some good days. I look forward to the next few weeks to just see if they get out there and try to get on some of that secondary stuff at the mouths of the creeks and then make their way on out to the river. But stay tuned in the next couple weeks. I'll give you a rundown. I expect that, I'll be throwing a big swim bait, crankbait, drop shot, that sort of stuff by then, dragging a worm around, that sort of stuff. So if I can help, electronics training, I'm booked through the month of June, but I'm starting to book through July now. Lowrance Electronics Training, the on-water class that I offer. And then if I can help you with the guide trip, in the next couple of months, I'd be happy to. Shoot me an email, info@brandonhunterfishing.com. Check out my website. I'm on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram. I do all that stuff. So see you guys on the water.